Hello friends, this is Lada again, and this is our final part 3 of webinar 12, where we talk about the Earth shift, where we talk about how COVID-19 catalyzed a lot of changes, and where I give you my futurist predictions. I hope you enjoyed our previous parts, and here in this part I want to answer several questions from 3 different patrons and webinar participants. Now, one of the questions from Seeker about whether people would be still living in cities or relocated into villages, I already answered throughout the webinar, so please refer to my extensive explanations and predictions about reclaiming roots and moving to villages and such. So that applies to the whole world, although in Russia it's a very prominent, currently prominent trend. And hopefully in other countries as well, this will be coming up. Now, the next question from Seeker, as a futurist patron, he is welcome to ask multiple questions if he wants to. And so he says, consciousness 2020 through 2026. Will Lada's average patrons notice a difference? If affirmative, then how? Well, that's actually an excellent question, and throughout this webinar I already pretty much explained what will be going on. So pretty much refer to my conclusions, to my major trends, and to my predictions. What will be different? Will an average patron notice? Pay attention to these signs. Everything that I've been telling you, and we'll continue talking in webinar 13 and 14 about the economy and then about the esoteric stuff, and you will understand the full picture as a result of these 4 webinars. If you order them together, then you will understand, you will know what signs to look for, where it is noticeable. You know, I can tell you also, like from the USSR collapse, for example, you know, if you watch the boiling pot, it never it never boils, right? So if you watch specific signs of what is happening based on what happened in the past, I can assure you things will be developing differently now. You know, so wherever you're not looking, that's where things happen. As far as consciousness, absolutely, we are moving into this 4D consciousness. As I said, be on the careful though, so you don't get stuck in 4D. You want to continue moving into 5D. So that's a brief answer. Throughout this whole webinar, Seeker, I answered both of your questions, actually. And there are more questions you asked, and they will be answered because people on Patreon, I asked them to vote for questions that they prefer, that they want answered, and all of Seeker's questions got the most likes. And he asked a bunch of questions. They're all so great that anybody could ask these questions, and you know, I could not ask for anything better. So anyway, so next question. Excuse me, sorry about that. I just needed to check something, that it's actually recording. And it is recording, yes. You know, after 2.5 hours of recording, you know. And of course, as you see, my light is going. I apologize for that, but I've been recording for over 3 hours right now overall. So it could be darker at this point, but we will continue going until we're done. And this is going to be a brief Q&A session. Now, excellent questions from Emil. Emil Resman asks, from a higher perspective, is it even possible to contract corona or any other disease by accident? Do we really need to fear it? Well, that's an excellent question in itself. So here's the deal. From a higher dimensional perspective, basically, you are sort of generating your state of being, your state of health. You are sort of generating it. So higher dimensional perspectives basically mandates that you are responsible for whatever condition, health-wise, materially, financially, success-wise, anything, relationship-wise, you are in. You basically generated your reality. You created your reality. I usually say we co-create reality. So it's a combination of our inner and outer. Outer is giving us feedback is pressuring us into doing something, is sending us information, and we send it back. So we co-create reality together. In reality, it's a co-creation. It's not just like, COVID-19. I illustrated how it could be a completely unpredictable event, but working together with events I predicted years ago, working to help those events develop, right? So that's a co-creation. External factors influence us internally. We, in fact, our response, how we address what happened or what is happening, that informs the reality, outside reality. Or some people might rebel, other people may use this as a fabulous opportunity to create new webinars that a lot of people will enjoy, that will enlighten a lot of people, will help them understand. Other people might be fighting with each other, and some people might be developing spiritually and growing and using this time to learn and study, like a lot of my people do, right? In accident, we realize destiny. That's how I would put it. Do we need to fear it? No, we do not need to fear it. We need to accept the situation and work with it and become our best selves as a result of it. Develop lifestyle that is the best suited for this, and so that we're the most productive. Like I did. I mean, I cannot go places that I want to go to. I cannot do things that I want to. And we have refugees from New York City. This is why I'm recording downstairs and not in my usual office, because they're sleeping in my office. I only have a very limited use of my own office currently. But I make the best of it, right? People of our time, and especially in the West, Emil continues, are obsessed with safety and avoiding risks. At least in Sweden, people dare not live for fear of deaths. In Sweden, we have so far approximately 3,300 corona deaths out of 10 million population. Most of the deaths are old people. When will people accept that 3D life always ends with death? When will people accept it? When they have fifth dimensional consciousness, Emil and everybody. This is why I say 5D, please. Okay, 5D. I'm helping you all the way. I'm right here. Whether you need to talk to me privately, whether you want to be part of my advanced community on Patreon, listen to my webinars, etc., etc. There are so many opportunities. 5D. That's where we need to go. Okay, ascension. Yeah. And meantime, there is another school of thought which is equally valid, and that relates. That's why I lumped this kind of like group these questions together. A question from Teresa, and I will explain what I mean by that. So Teresa asks, is Russia approaching? I rephrased Teresa's question because it was actually a very interesting question in my opinion. Actually, very perceptive question, but it was phrased a little differently, so I rephrased it to reflect how I really want to explain it. So Teresa asks, is Russia approaching the COVID situation as a call to arms and another defense of the motherland? Because she says she watched the May 9th Victory Day fireworks in Russia when everybody is in quarantine, but they still did fireworks. And Putin's speech and everything else is shut down. But beautiful, beautiful things were done. I'm going to explain in a moment what I mean during May 9th by people in quarantine, and they still did beautiful things. So Teresa says, the May 9th fireworks in Moscow that I posted on Futurist Trendcast looked somewhat bellicose. So Teresa, first of all, about May 9th fireworks, they were in red hues, red colors, and they were very, very spectacular. A lot of people said that it's like some of the best fireworks they've ever seen. So Russians went all out, since there was no parade, no Immortal Regiment march that gathers millions upon millions of people all over Russia, no concerts, no events like that. So they went all out in those more virtual events that people can watch from anywhere. So they did huge fireworks, and they were in red hues. And red hues, some might perceive it as bellicose, and basically in Russia as well as in China, red color is the color of celebration and victory. And also red banner was the banner of victory that was established above Reichstag. That famous banner of victory was red. So with this symbolism in mind, and then it's red square and all that, right? So with this symbolism in mind, red is celebration, red is victory. That's what it is, okay? Not because it's like bellicose, which some people might perceive it as such, because it actually corresponds with lower chakras, okay? And lower chakras, that's where fight and flight resides and all that, okay? But in this case, it symbolizes victory, victory banner, and celebration. And so, is Russia approaching the COVID situation as a call to arms and another defense of the motherland? And that was rephrased based on Teresa's question. Yes, and that is correct. That was actually very perceptive of Teresa to see it this way, and I will explain why. I meant to mention this, since this came up, about May 9th. So there was quarantine in Russia everywhere, and especially in Moscow. Moscow, like New York, like any capital, basically, because New York, let's face it, is really the capital, not Washington, D.C. Of the United States. There are more cases than anywhere else, okay? A lot of cases, like 1/3 or 1/2 of all cases are in Moscow. So everybody is in quarantine, everybody's at home, and yet they from homes, people did this amazing, remarkable things during May 9th. Well, some, of course, were singing from balconies, serenading. There were like small orchestras. Some were posting these beautiful videos on YouTube with their songs, with their little choirs in their apartments and such, with songs of victory. And of course there was online Immortal Regiment March, and 12 million people participated in it. Can you believe it? 12 million people. Immortal Regiment, where they post the pictures of their ancestors who died in the war, who defended the world and Russia and the Soviet Union during World War II, and various other people, vets of all kinds. So people were posting that online, and that marathon online, which was hosted by the Russian government, this virtual marathon, where like basically portrait after portrait, it's very beautiful, lasted for 12 hours straight. They transferred that beautiful Immortal Regiment March and parade online, and of course there was air parade in several cities, Moscow, St. Petersburg, and Sevastopol, and in Syria as well. And another interesting thing that Russians did on May 9th, a lot of people came out onto their balconies in cities and such to sing Victory Day, День Победы, that famous song, and that was at 7 p.m. That was their time, 7 p.m. their time. If you were in a different zone, you could do the same at your specific local time. And also there was this windows of light. That was another action. So basically half of the population of Russia, it appears, from what I hear, participated in that. Windows of light means that people in apartment buildings and condos, whatever, throughout cities and high rises, they would flicker their windows at a predetermined time. So the whole Moscow was flickering like this, and the people were actually amazed and like awed in the best of senses, and charmed by how many people actually participated in that. I still have not seen the videos. I think so many people participated in that themselves that nobody actually managed to make any videos of that. But they said that was beautiful, actually, that all these flickering windows all over the city, and you could see it like everywhere. The whole Moscow is flickering, and not just Moscow. So that was very pretty. Yes, so from that perspective, Russia approached this whole situation very seriously. And with COVID, see, you have to understand, the population of Russia became so small and is the largest country territorially in the world, even after it lost all those peripheral republics. The population of Russia right now officially is 146 million, but there are like 10, maybe 12 million of those who want to be citizens or permanent residents or refugees or workers from other countries at least, okay? So the population is tiny for that kind of territory. It diminished throughout the 20th century, so many disasters. It would grow in spurts of growth, accompanied by these humongous losses. World War II alone, 27 million people, that's all over Soviet Union, but the majority of them were Russians. More Russians than Ukrainians were second largest loss, about 7 or 8 million, okay? Before that, there was revolution and civil war. There were Stalin's repressions, then World War II. Cold War population grew exponentially. And then in 1991, the breakdown of the Soviet Union, a lot of people, some people died because of their heartbreak and because they lost jobs and because they lost their country. Some people immigrated. So Russia lost huge amount of population. Of course, a lot of migration back into Russia occurred. And so Russia is trying to restore this population. Great Balancer is supposed to have enough population to maintain that balance. Russia is a lot weaker than the Soviet Union was, smaller, weaker, right? And still doing very, very well, considering the amount of pressure and sanctions and all these like hybrid wars and God knows what is happening, right? And despite that, they're managing to actually proceed pretty well. So with all that, Russia has to be worried about population preservation, not to mention increase. So when there is coronavirus, yes, they approach it as defense of the motherland. They literally are mobilizing to preserve the population. Some already compare that situation with World War II, called in Russia the Great Patriotic War. So that war, they say, this is a parallel. While those heroes during World War II, during a Great Patriotic War, preserved our country and our people and allowed us to be born and exist, now Putin and the government and everybody who's helping him are doing the same today, preserving our population in the midst of all these crises, including coronavirus and hybrid wars and everything else. So clearly, sure, they are approaching it in that regard. And to answer again, to tie in Emil's question here, this is not fear. This comes from wisdom and understanding of Russia's mission and the mission of those people who are at the helm to preserve that world. And I will give you another interesting into another interesting piece of feedback that's part of Forbidden History, but it's on the surface right there. So if you listen to my Forbidden History and Forgotten Origins webinars, you will understand it even better. Here's the deal. 100 years ago, Slavs, and you know who Slavs are, right? Russians are the best, the more concentrated and the more successful part of the Slavic world. But Slavs are Eastern Slavs, that's Russians, and then the brainchilds are Ukrainians and Belarusians, that's Eastern Slavs. But in reality, they're one people. They're one great Russian people, okay? Or Rus. All of us are Rus, okay? That's Eastern Slavs. There are Western Slavs, that's Czech, Slovaks, Poles, pretty much. That's it. And there are Southern Slavs, and that's everybody, Serbs, Croats, Slovenians, of course, and Bulgarians, and others who cluster in the Balkans. In fact, Bosnians are also, even though they're different religion and all that, but they're still same Slavs. They're Yugoslavs. Yugoslavs means Southern Slavs, actually. Well, I don't know why some of them get so offended when they're called Yugoslavs, because to them Yugoslavia, that's like association with Serbia, but in reality the word is a lot older than Serbia or Yugoslavia as a country, for that matter. Yeah. Yeah, I know. People are finding it this way. Anyway, so obviously Russia is the most prominent, the most successful of all the Slavic countries, the most extensive, but it is still part of the Slavic world. And so 100 years ago, and before that, Slavs constituted 15%, over 15% of the global population. And now it's only 3.6%. What does this tell you? How many wars, how much extermination, how many of these sabotages by the West, how many of these trying to exterminate Slavs, and not just Russians or Eastern Slavs, others as well, were in this situation. Of course, they're not necessarily counting all the Slavs, like people like me, or Stanislav, my patrons know him. We live in the West, maybe they're not counting us. I don't know how they're counting, but still the fall in the percentage of the population is drastic. And Slavs are some of the wisdom and roots keepers of the planet Earth. Without us, guys, unfortunately, a lot of Slavs are fighting between themselves. Just like people in the Middle East, instead of uniting, they're also fighting, which is really silly. Here we also have the same situation, and I try to unite everybody and explain to everybody, but look at Ukrainians, right? For example, I'm not even talking about people in the Balkans and all those Balkan wars and all that, right? And look at Czechs, how they're behaving, and Poles. It's truly appalling how they're behaving. They're trying to, literally, they dream about finishing Russia off, exterminating Russia. That's how poisoned they are. Well, anyway, so from that perspective also, to preserve that balance, people have to maintain and preserve their populations. Okay, that's what it's a very legitimate, in order to continue living, like without Russia, the Great Balancer, we cannot continue developing as humanity. The Great Balancer is probably always needed on any planet, in any civilization, in any reality, but in 3D reality and lower 4D, it's especially required, it's crucial, because without it, one side would always dominate another, and the balancer has to reset that balance all the time. Okay, it's a very difficult job, very ungrateful job. You're always hated by somebody, but that's like a karmic and global mission. And yeah, so far that's what the way it is. Okay, so I hope I answered all of your questions, guys. So don't forget that our world is multidimensional. I will conclude with that. So while Emil has a point when he says, when will people accept that 3D life always ends with death? That's spiritually and philosophically, that is correct approach for each of us. But if you are president of a country or governor or whatever, head of a country, for example, you are tasked basically with preserving your population, keeping it healthy, keeping it happy, keeping it alive, especially when you are head of the Great Balancer. So here you have to think about preservation of the population, not about, death. It's part of life. And it is part of life. It is, actually. It's just another form of life, and then there is either reincarnation or ascension into higher dimensions. And that's, guys, that's another topic. And we will be... oh yeah, my throat is gone. Just in time. End of the webinar, and my throat is gone. That we will be discussing. We will be having these fabulous workshops. I don't know when I'll get to them, but I promise in the next 6 months or a year or even later, because I have so many ideas, so many plans for you guys. So we will be talking about life and death and how it's perceived in different dimensions, and whether you should go into the light when you die or not, and who lies, who tells the truth, why there is like this light stigma. Go into the light, right, when you die. There are so many interesting questions that I will answer for you. And that's all for today. I will go have some more tea and recover my voice now. I hope you're having a fabulous, fabulous week and month and year. And I hope to see you again in webinars 13 and 14. And of course on Patreon and Futurist Trendcast on YouTube. Subscribe to that. And wishing you all a wonderful day, wonderful week. Whenever you're watching this, day, night, year. And I love you all. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.